Hey guys, FRYD here. About to come with some quality content. Let's see, why do we want to jailbreak my PS4? I'm thinking of doing this in a few hours so we can get all the games, but it's a good question. Yeah, I think it'd be pretty cool to have a... Holy shit, he's playing Smash Bros.
Steps, simply connect the device to your PS4, plug in the USB drive, and set up your network settings to use PPPoE. Then you simply wait for the payload Gold Hen to be loaded. Gold Hen is the main jailbreak for the PS4 and comes with many awesome features like a built-in FTP server to remotely access the file system of your PS4 from another device. It's got in-game overlays displaying handy stats like FPS, CPU usage, RAM usage, and more, and a full package installer allowing you to install additional applications from a USB drive, similar to side-loading apps on an Android device. One of these apps is the Homebrew Store, which can allow you to browse and install community-made PS4 apps like emulators, games, and utilities. Now, we cannot talk about jailbreaking without mentioning the elephant in the room. Of course, jailbreaking can open up the door to piracy, as the side-loading feature can be used to install full PS4 games, DLC content, and updates that can all be accessed without a license using what's known as a fake package. All games and apps for the PS4 come in an installable format known as package files, .pkg files. These files are encrypted and compressed and require a unique key to decrypt them at runtime. These packages cannot be loaded even when the console is jailbroken without the appropriate license on your account or game disk. So instead, any app or game that requires the jailbreak to run are installed as fake packages known as FPKG. These fake packages have been encrypted using a common key so that the jailbreak will be able to decrypt them and launch them at runtime. This makes it easy to download and install games, DLC, and updates and run them on a jailbroken PS4. This doesn't just benefit the pirates, as it can also be great for game preservation. For example, you can take any disk-based PS4 game and dump the game files using a homebrew app called Items Flow. You can then repack those game files into a fake package that can then be installed and run on any jailbreakable PS4 without the original game disk. It can also be played in a future PS4 emulator for the PC in the not too distant future. Now, speaking of free games, today's sponsor is World of Warships Legends, a free-to-play naval combat game where you get to command iconic warships from history and battle it out in epic 9v9 matches. There's over 400 ships from 11 different nations to command, and they keep things fresh by updating the game every 5 weeks with new ships, missions, and upgrades. Choose from destroyers for swift surprise attacks, cruisers for well-rounded combat, and battleships for devastating firepower. Plan your shots carefully and pick the right ships, weapons, and upgrades to suit your playstyle and strategy. The game is available on PlayStation and Xbox platforms, and this summer World of Warships Legends is teaming up with Star Trek Universe to bring you some iconic additions from the Star Trek world. Up until the 4th of August, you can tour the bridge of the Starship Enterprise, recreated in stunning detail, and unlock up to 4 new Star Trek commanders, Picard, Spock, Gowron, and Sayla, and unlock Star Trek ship skins, patches, flags, camos, and more. During this event, new players will gain access to a starter pack to get you up and sailing in no time. This includes the American Tier 3 premium battleship Arkansas, German Tier 3 cruiser Karlsruhe, and 7 days of premium account access, 5 common crates, 10 red, white, and blue camouflages, and 10 hunter camouflages. So don't miss out on these deals. Use my link in the description below and start sinking ships in World of Warships Legends today.
We put in the work to make the holidays fresh. You put in the work to make them special.
Another great feature is the ability to gain more control over your gaming experience with cheats, patches, and mods. One of the homebrew apps in the homebrew store is called the ps4 Cheats Manager. It will allow you to download all of the latest cheats, patches, and plugins made by the community. When playing a PS4 game, you can hold down the share button on the controller and it will bring up any trainers that are supported for that title. You can switch between multiple trainers with R1 and R2 and toggle cheats like God Mode, Infinite Ammo, max out your items, currency, and more. Then just press circle to return back to the game with your cheats now enabled. You can also use PS4 Cheats Manager to apply specific patches to your games. Like with Bloodborne on PS4 Pro, you can lower the resolution to 720p, unlock the frame rate, and with boost mode enabled, you can run Bloodborne at 60 FPS, and all it took was a few clicks. For other games, there are patches to lock and unlock the frame rate, fix frame pacing issues, skip intros, and enable hidden developer menus to uncover cut content, access developer tools, and explore outside of the map boundaries. Finally, we come to mods. There are full-on mod menus for popular games like Red Dead Redemption 2 and GTA 5 that are very similar to the types of mod menus available for the PC version, allowing you to change models, spawn in vehicles, access flying cars, and much more. There are also mods that replace game files, allowing you to play as different characters in the Resident Evil franchise, and install full-on PC mods for Bethesda titles like Fallout 4 and Skyrim. Save editing is also possible, as there's a great homebrew app called Apollo that allows you to resign save files. You can import saves downloaded online, resign a save file from one profile to another, swap saves between different game versions, and extract the decrypted save data to edit the save files in a save editor to create your own modded save files. You can even activate your PS4 account with the same PSN account ID as another account that you use on a retail PS4 or PS5, so that any save files edited on your jailbroken PS4 can then be transferred and loaded on your retail consoles. Another huge benefit of jailbreaking your PS4 is going to be emulation. Sony developed their own software-based emulators that enabled them to release a limited selection of Sega Saturn, PS1, PSP, and PS2 games on the PS4. These official emulators have been dumped on jailbroken PS4s and repackaged with any Sega Saturn, PS1, PSP, and PS2 ISO to get them running on PS4. Not every title will work, and there are some tweaks that can be made to the emulator settings to improve compatibility with more problematic titles. That's not to underestimate the number of titles that are currently supported, of which there are a great many, and of course there are pre-made versions that have already been optimized and made available for download. These emulators include all the bells and whistles, like the ability to rewind the game, add scan lines, change the aspect ratio on the fly, and gain access to save states. Beyond Sony's official emulators, there's also an unofficial port of RetroArch by developer OsirisX. This is a full-blown RetroArch port that can run games going all the way back to the early 80s with the Commodore 64, the Atari, all the way through to the NES, SNES, Sega Genesis, N64, PS1, and PSP, just to name a few. Now, sticking with the theme of running games from other platforms, how about running GameCube, Wii, Wii U, and even PC games on the PS4? Well, this is made possible with the ability to boot the PS4 into a Linux distro. Linux can be set up on the PS4 in something akin to a dual boot setup, where you can switch between the PS4's Orbis OS operating system and a Linux distro of your choice. You can even choose how much RAM you want to allocate as video memory, so that you can target a specific game or emulator that might require more video memory or more system memory. You can run a full desktop Linux distribution with built-in driver support for PS4's APU, allowing you to run other emulators like CMU, a Wii U emulator, Dolphin, a GameCube and Wii emulator, and the latest official build of RetroArch, and many more. Not to mention the ability to run PC games on Linux. Over the past few years, with the launch of the Steam Deck, Valve have made significant progress in turning Linux into a viable platform for PC gaming. You can now take advantage of this on the PS4 to play most of your Steam library through Linux via Proton, a compatibility layer for Windows games on Linux. You can also use the website ProtonDB to find the best compatibility settings to get your games running as smoothly as possible. This can allow you to run games like Halo on a PS4 with the right settings enabled. There's also Lutris, a universal games launcher, to get non-Steam games running too. But Linux can be used for many other things, like hosting a media server, accessing a proper web browser for streaming services like Netflix and Spotify, and pretty much anything else you can do with a desktop PC.
I got you right where I want you.
Aloy! In the far future, there are no TVs, just beautiful and totally not boring nature everywhere. Oh, and giant robot dinosaurs, of course. But you're not here to listen to me. This is a game, not an audiobook.
Oh, this is gonna be good.
Bricks are gonna fly! Kapow! Time for a paddling.
Yeah!
This is gonna hurt. Power hit.
Up I go! How do you like this? Boom! You sure it's dead?
Whoa, looking good.
Stretch your stuff.
Let's dance!
I've got fabulous taste.
Yeah, no, that's it, that's it.
Always leave a place better than you found it. Drop that beat, Silence!
Cool new stuff.
Let's join Aloy as she embarks on an epic adventure.
PlayStation.
Save on gifts worth giving at Best Buy. Shop now and save.
There's also a dedicated emulation distro, which can be used for those who just want to use Linux purely as an emulation station. Now let's get into the downsides. There are two big downsides to jailbreaking your PS4 over the years. One of them has mostly been resolved, and that's the issue of not being able to play the latest games, DLC and updates, as we need to stay on an older firmware like 11.0 to continue to access the jailbreak, and future PS4 game releases require the latest firmware to run them. So in the past, jailbroken PS4s couldn't run the latest games without updating and losing access to the jailbreak. Thankfully, this isn't really an issue anymore thanks to Cyber1000, aka CYB1K, who has access to the decryption keys necessary to decrypt games that require a higher firmware to run. He then backports these games to work on the older firmwares, and the fake packages are released so that people on jailbreakable firmwares can run all the latest games, DLC and updates. But the big elephant in the room is going to be PSN access, which has been unobtainable for those on a jailbroken PS4. You need to be on the latest firmware to play online via PSN, and since the jailbreak requires an older firmware, we simply cannot access it. Firmware spoofing does not solve this problem as it doesn't work the same way as it does with PS3. So what options do we have for online play? Well, the best option right now is to use a homebrew app called PSLAN. PSLAN connects your PS4 to a server that everyone else running the service will also be connected to. You can run any supported title that has a LAN play option that would normally allow you to find players that are limited to your local network. With PSLAN, the LAN play option will allow you to connect to anyone else who is hosting a game online via PSLAN. You can join the Discord server to find people to play with, or simply search for a LAN game to find people who are already hosting. The service currently supports all of the Call of Duty games that support LAN play, with more game support being continuously added. There's also a private Fortnite server called EasyFN that's available on PS4. EasyFN is a classic Fortnite server with cross-platform support. You simply sign up on the website and download the modified Fortnite package to log in and play online. The final option for online play is to boot Linux and play PC games online. Since it's Linux, you may run into issues with anti-cheat systems that don't play nice with Proton, but for games with less aggressive anti-cheat, it is possible to play them online. Another option that's a lot more difficult to pull off is the Revert mod. The Revert mod is a hardware mod that can allow you to update to the latest firmware to play online through PSN, then revert the firmware back down to a jailbreakable firmware so that you can access the jailbreak again. It's like having two consoles in one, and it's a similar concept to something like the Nintendo Switch's emulated NAND or EMU NAND, or the Xbox 360's dual NAND chips. However, it's not an easy process to install, but if you're handy with a soldering iron, it might be something to look into. So in my view, those are the main benefits and downsides to jailbreaking a PS4 in 2024. All of the footage shown in this video are from my own tutorials playlist that you can check out if you want to jailbreak your own PS4 and set up everything that's been mentioned in this video. I'll have that linked below. So hope you guys enjoyed this video or found the information useful. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. And once again, I'll hopefully see you guys in the next video.
With hundreds of brands and 4 warehouses nationwide, you can get all the gear you need in 2 days or less. Add in 0% interest financing, along with an all-musician customer service team, and you can see why millions of musicians have chosen it.
What are we thinking?
I was thinking a 4-leg parlay.
I was thinking 6.
I was thinking... Good thinking, thank you.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
Probably not.
New customers bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win.
Machine learning is advancing, but businesses wonder if some machines can keep up.
Let's welcome our new coworker, Jeff.
Copier has a great idea.
Wonder if it's the same idea as yesterday.
It's a performance issue, really. I know people push your buttons, but you still have to deliver.
Anything can change the world of work. ADP Assist is AI.
All right, hacking your PlayStation 4 just got way easier. In fact, a few weeks ago, there was this new method that was released, and I gotta say, it's to the point now where hacking a PlayStation 4 takes a few minutes, and here's the best part for, I'm sure, many people who watch these videos, you don't have to open the system. It was really cool to see this recently with the Xbox 360, and now we're following suit with the PlayStation 4 and your PlayStation 4 Pro. In fact, things get even better because the big holdup for a lot of us comes down to the firmware that's on the PlayStation 4. Well, this recent hack actually works up to 12.02. In fact, if you've put your PlayStation 4 in a closet for like a year or two now waiting for some kind of breakthrough, this may be it. This is something I've been waiting for as well. Not only an easy way, but also one that would work with some of the firmware that I had on my system. So if you guys enjoy the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. We're going to start today with this video sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Factor. Some days it feels like life is being played on fast forward, and all of a sudden you realize it's dinner time and you haven't even thought about what to make. That's where Factor comes in. Instead of reaching for fast food, you can get never frozen, high quality meals that are ready in just 2 minutes using only a microwave. I like to use Factor during the day when working on videos and filming since it's easy, quick,
what is going on,
and
guys?
cleanup is a breeze. Factor has recently expanded their menu in a big way, now offering more than 80 rotating weekly meals, meaning more variety, more flavor, and more options to fit your goals. I like to aim for higher protein meals, and Factor has no shortage there, with my favorite right now being the homestyle turkey and gravy that comes with this spiced cranberry sauce that blends really well. They also offer all sorts of add-ons like breakfast, snacks, and smoothies. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code SpawnWave FB50 to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code SpawnWaveFB50 at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. Keep the flavor while fueling your goals today with Factor. Thanks to Factor, I do have my Spider-Man PS4 Pro here. It's been sitting around for a bit and currently has firmware 12.0 on it. That's been out of the range for just being able to soft mod it and do this jailbreak and stuff. But now with this latest exploit, that being the lapse exploit, it supports firmware 9.00 to 12.02. So this falls right in the range for it, which is great. You also need a USB flash drive, and you'll need a Blu-ray disc that you can write to. And I know you're already thinking, I don't have a way to write a Blu-ray. And fortunately, if that's the case, the free market is kind of taking care of this because, well, people are burning these Blu-rays and then just putting them up on eBay for like 10 or 15 bucks. I happen to have a way to write to a blank Blu-ray. Funny.
The 3DS is an amazing handheld. You do a quick search on YouTube and you're going to see like 1,000 videos on it, and these aren't necessarily videos that came out almost 15 years ago when the 3DS did. The videos then were also probably much less kind than the videos you're going to see today, complaining about the 3D effect and mostly about how expensive it was when it came out. Now the videos will praise the device for its wonderful library, its especially excellent modding ability, while still also complaining about how expensive it is. Some things just don't change, do they? But even at these inflated prices, the 3DS is still a beast of a machine. I've made a few videos on just how awesome the 3DS is and how much more awesome a modded 3DS is, and those have done great for the channel, so big thanks to anyone who's watched those and whoever's watching this now. The 3DS was a device I never thought I'd love. I completely ignored it when it released, and for the first 5 years of its life, I never thought about actually buying one, mostly because it was expensive to me even after the price drop. And it was a time when I didn't do a lot of gaming, though oddly it was before I had kids and should have had plenty of time for it. I don't know what happened, life's strange, okay? But having a kid and Pokemon Go coming out reignited a passion for Pokemon and prompted me to buy a 3DS. And luckily for me, the new 3DS XL was out by then. I've only ever worked on the original 3DS, never really played games on it, so I can't comment on how bad the 3D effect is on those, but I'm telling you, I'm one of those weirdos who kind of likes the 3D effect in the game. It just doesn't give me a headache, I guess, and for the most part, at least on the new 3DS, the 3D is well done. The eye tracking is quite impressive. I will say I'm currently playing through Metal Gear Solid 3D. Thanks Cosmic Ray for that one. And it's a bit iffy in some points. The cutscenes look great and all, but sometimes with the grass and trees being all sorts of depth, it does throw off my eyes and strain them. So it's admittedly not always great, but still, even without the 3D-ness of the 3DS, it's a fantastic system. I mean, the library of games it can play natively, coupled with what it can do when modded, is amazing. It was a very sad day when Nintendo decided to shut down the eShop, but at the same time, it was a bit of a relief, at least for me. My thoughts on acquiring games through alternative means hinge mostly on if those games are available to purchase legitimately. And to me, that means, does the publisher or developer make anything from my purchase? And if they do, I'll gladly buy the game. And even still, I might want a physical copy of the game because I do have a little collection that I enjoy, but if it's been out of print for years, like every 3DS game at this point, then buying a physical copy from someone on eBay doesn't do anything for the developer. They don't make any money from that transaction, just the reseller makes money. So once the eShop shut down, any revenue developers got from selling their games on there disappeared. Even if I wanted to buy the game, pay the full price of $40, man, do we remember when that used to get you a full-fledged Pokemon game? And one without a whole bunch of glitches? Those were the days. Anyway, even if I wanted to buy a game, I couldn't. But if I want to play a game, I should be able to. If you don't want to let me buy it, that's more on you, Nintendo, than it is on me. I mean, there are still ways to download these games today, and there's no money being exchanged, so don't sit there and tell me it costs way too much for Nintendo to keep those servers open. It's not the issue. The reason is they wanted people to move away from the 3DS and pay their subscription service for the Switch, which I'm sure a lot of people did. Luckily, people are stubborn, and the modding community is amazing. With a simple SD card, you can unlock so much potential that the 3DS can in some way stand toe-to-toe with the Switch, maybe even the Switch 2. Not in terms of graphics or power or anything like that, I'm not crazy, but in terms of pure enjoyment, it still holds strong. That's not to say the 3DS is perfect, far from it in fact. It has, well, three glaring issues that I see. The first is an issue that every 3DS has to deal with, and that's a very pixelated, low resolution, low contrast screen. The screens are terrible, okay? I think we can all admit that, and you can't really hide it. Now, lucky for me, my 3DS has an IPS top screen, but the bottom one is a TN screen. Nintendo, for some dumb cost-cutting reason, decided they were going to source their screens from different manufacturers, and in the process, those different manufacturers used different technologies. What the hell? So we, the lucky unsuspecting consumer, were left with just a luck of the draw chance of getting either IPS or TN screens. The difference being either marginal if you're someone who's not that picky, or astronomical if you're even a little picky. There are whole threads out there about people finding the holy grail of dual IPS screen 3DSs. I see a difference between my top and bottom screen, but I can't rightly say that it would affect my enjoyment if the top screen was also TN. The viewing angle's worse, sure, but I'm usually looking right at the screen when I'm playing, so okay. And the colors are supposed to be worse as well, which I think is a more legitimate concern. Whichever screen your 3DS has, it's still going to have the same low resolution display, which means we get these gnarly jagged edges in almost anything. It just can't be helped. The 3DS screen is effectively 400 by 240 for the top and 320 by 240 for the bottom. On a 3.53 inch screen, that gives you a pixel density of 132 ppi. Now mind you, the iPhone 4, yes, that ancient phone that came with the Retina display, had a pixel density of 326 ppi in 2010. Like almost 3 times more pixels per inch. The PS Vita was 220 ppi. By all metrics and standard, the 3DS screen is a very low resolution for something that came out in 2011, and it's quite evident in almost every game. The second issue with the 3DS is one that hopefully not everyone experiences, but I fear one day will. It's that darn hinge, man. First of all, it's just a natural weak point for any and all hinged devices. And if there's one thing we all know about plastic is that as it ages, it likes to get brittle. You can go on eBay and see tons of examples of 3DSs with broken hinges for sale. And while you can do a reshell for that, that's about the only real fix to something like this. A broken hinge basically makes the thing unplayable. And a broken hinge isn't even the worst possibility of bad things this hinge can do. The way it's designed, there are 3 ribbon cables that run through that hinge connecting the speakers, screen, and camera to the motherboard. Over time, the hinge likes to wear down those ribbon cables, and if it should ever cut one of them, well, there's a good chance your 3DS will stop working. You'll try, and it'll light up for a second, and then pop, shut right off. If that happens, you have to replace whichever ribbon's been cut, which means tearing apart your 3DS, and believe you me, it's not a pretty picture. I don't like doing it.
Are you ready? Get set! Anything goes in Kirby Air Riders. Jump into the free-for-all mayhem of city.
And the third issue is the 3DS is just plain underpowered at this point. The new 3DS rectified this slightly, doubling the CPU cores from 2 to 4 and increasing clock speed from a measly 268 MHz to a less measly 804 MHz. The boost in performance was mostly seen in loading speeds, but there were some games that would only run on the new 3DS. Not a lot of games, mind you, but some. Either way, the 3DS was underpowered when it came out, but that was sort of Nintendo's thing. The DS was underpowered compared to the PSP, the Wii severely underpowered compared to the 360 and PS3, and the Wii U would release a year later than the 3DS, and it too would be underpowered compared to the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. Underpowering their consoles was just Nintendo's MO in the later half of the 2000s and early 2010s while they tried to save hardware costs. It didn't hurt their sales, well, not too much. The DS and 3DS sold like crazy, as did the Wii. The Wii U, well, that was its own little failure. Still a great console. I just mentioned how I'm playing Metal Gear Solid 3D. That's a PS2 game, and it's pushing the limits of the 3DS pretty good. A PSP could almost play PS2 games, and the Vita was blowing it out of the water in terms of graphics and screen. I still really want one. Xenoblade Chronicles was a Wii game, and you needed the new 3DS to play a downscaled, low-resolution port of it. Still, Nintendo's always been great about giving us games that outshine their graphics, and personally, I think superior gameplay is more important than superior graphics. It feels like these days studios are putting more resources into improving hyper-realistic graphics over gameplay and story, and the result is just a bunch of good-looking games that are not that fun to play. With this, you have a bunch of okay-looking games that are a ton of fun to play. But where do we go from here? There are only 75.94 million 3DSs in the world, and truth be told, there are a lot less than that that are actually functional. Where does that leave us, the gamers who want to play 3DS games? Well, if you have a 3DS, lucky you, don't ever sell it. If you don't have one, you could go on eBay to try buying one. The prices have gone up a lot recently, especially for the new 3DS, but truth be told, they're not that ridiculous. With a little bit of luck and timing and patience, you can maybe snag one for less than $200, but you're probably looking at something around $250. This thing's held its value better than most watches. The condition might not be perfect, but these are going on 10 to 15 years old at this point, and unlike home consoles, these are thrown in backpacks, slipped into pockets. They see some wear and tear, and that's just unavoidable. But if you're into emulation, there are options available now and some really exciting ones on the horizon. Technically speaking, you can play 3DS games on a number of handhelds right now, or your computer even. They're not going to be the best way to play, usually. Don't know if you know this, but the 3DS has, well, 2 screens, and most devices have only 1 screen. So there's that limitation. And while there are plenty of games that barely use the bottom screen or that are completely playable without it, there are a lot where having to switch between the 2 screens or having them smushed together really makes it so it's not the best situation. Not to mention that the bottom screen is meant for touch inputs, and that's just not something every handheld emulator uses. But the options for dual screens is growing, both on the high end and thankfully the, well, upper low end. Starting with one of the more funky looking consoles, the Sugar One from 1X Player. This looks interesting. It almost looks to me like the Rotom Pokédex configuration. Not sure if that's what they were going for, but that's just what I see. Either way, it looks like a normal single screen handheld, but then bam, you flip around the screen on the back and you've got a 3DS looking configuration. Both screens are OLED, a 6-inch top screen, almost 4-inch bottom screen. It promises really good performance all around, but we'll have to wait and see just how powerful it is and how well it runs games. They even call out the hinge they've designed because, like I said, with any folding console, the hinge is very much a critical weak point. It's nice to see them addressing it. Hopefully that means they actually made something that's durable and can withstand all the twisting and turning you're gonna do with it. And it should be durable. It costs $700, which is a bit outrageous for a handheld and makes it like 3 times more expensive than a used 3DS. It better be good for that price, and it better play something beyond 3DS games really well. Whatever it can do, it's out of my price range right now. And if that price doesn't scare you, then maybe look at something like the Ayaneo Flip 1 SDS. Oh, the names are terrible. It's a full-fledged Windows device, which does put it in a different category than most Android-based or otherwise emulator handhelds. Still, it costs an eye-watering $1,300 if you back the product now. Yeah, I'm not about to pay that even if I can make an underperforming video on it. Just not happening. I'm sure it does wonderful and amazing things well beyond emulating a 3DS, but since we're talking about the 3DS right now, there are better options than that. Starting with a toned down version of the Flip 1S, the Pocket DS. It only runs Android, which is just fine for emulation, and costs only $400. Yeah, I don't think only costing $400 makes it all that tempting. I mean, people freaked out over the Switch 2 costing $450. I can't see how they go for this, even if it might be powerful enough to emulate Switch games.
We put in the work to make the holidays fresh.
There are better options. Another option is a simple add-on for an already available device, the Retroid Dual Screen add-on. At only $70, this can connect to something like the Retroid Pocket 5 and effectively give you the 3DS you're looking for. It's not exactly the same form factor or portability of a 3DS, but it's certainly powerful enough to play your games, and if you already have something like the Retroid Pocket 5 or another compatible device, it's a cheap peripheral to up that DS experience and fill in a gap you might have. But then we come to the real reason for the video. When I made one of my previous videos talking about the best ways to play retro Pokemon, I included the 3DS games in that discussion because, well, the 3DS is effectively retro at this point. It's almost 15 years old after all. But when I made that video, I said the best way to play 3DS games was on a 3DS because there just weren't that many options out there for dual screens at the time, at least not ones priced on par with a 3DS. And then, wouldn't you know it, the day after I published it, or maybe the day before, Ian announces the Thor, and it starts at $250, which isn't all that much more than a used new 3DS. Now, what does something like this do better than the 3DS? It's going to have a better screen, that's for sure. Top screen, 6-inch OLED, 1080p screen, 120Hz refresh rate. Yes, yes, and yes. Much better across the board. Bottom screen, 3.92-inch 1080p with 60Hz refresh rate. Still a much better improvement over the 3DS bottom screen and their touch screens. and they reinforced the hinge. Games will look so much better, especially because emulators are able to upscale the assets, and there are sure to be texture packs that take games even beyond that. Oh, it just looks great, and I really, really want one. Maybe one day. It looks like a modern day 3DS, though missing a few things like a camera and of course the 3D capability. I think most people are willing to trade those out for better looking and smoother gameplay. Yes, even me, someone who enjoys the 3D-ness of the 3DS. What I'm not sure people are willing to trade out are the things the 3DS does that an emulator just can't. An emulator doesn't have the 3DS operating system. It's not got the same themes, the same layout, the same overall design of the system. It can play the games, sure, but it can't replicate the experience of a 3DS. I'm sure there are going to be, or there are custom firmware that can simulate it close enough, but I don't know that for sure. If you do, please let me know down below. That's one thing I love about making videos, is learning so much from you guys. So thank you for sharing your knowledge with me. I really appreciate it. I'm not an expert, and I'm sure that comes across without saying. But there are some things a 3DS does well that an emulator just can't do. It can't run older games natively, nor 3DS games natively. It can't connect to the 8-shop. It can't connect to Pokemon Bank or Home. You can't use PKSM on an emulator. There are limitations to just what this can do. Of course, there are limitations to what a 3DS can do, and that's the reality of technology. There's always a limitation. It's just how much limitation are you willing to accept? Figuring that used new 3DS will run about the same price as a new Iron Thor, which one with its own set of limitations would you choose? Obviously, if you had both, you'd be in a good spot. You could play your games with upscaled resolution, using save states, fast forward, and all the wonderful things emulators bring to the table. And then you could turn around and inject that save data into your 3DS if you ever wanted additional functionality. Find a nice shiny in Omega Ruby and want to bring it home? You could do that. And that's amazing, and hopefully the future that we're looking at. One might also hope that something like this, priced at this price point, would help put some downward pressure on 3DS prices. Having something of similar form factor capable of playing your DS, 3DS games with better resolution, clearer screens, brighter colors, better battery life, better controls, better customization will definitely give people another option when looking for ways to play 3DS, DS, and a whole bunch of other systems on one device. And if that means less people willing to pay the inflated prices of the 3DS because they don't have to, then hopefully we'll see the prices drop. It won't be dramatic, but even if they could get closer to around 200 on average, I think that's a great thing. Because if you only want to use a 3DS to do the few things an emulator handheld can't, the 2DS is a great cheap option to fill that role. I wouldn't want to play games on this, but it's great utility for transferring Pokemon or downloading games from the 8-shop to then move over to an emulator. I can't imagine it getting any better than this, but not long ago, the options for 3DS emulation were very limited. I mean, like a month ago. Who knows what these companies will come up with in a year. Thanks for watching, and I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who's watched any of my videos, who've commented, who've subscribed to the channel. I don't know if you can tell by the erratic upload schedule, but this is not my full-time gig. I don't have sponsors. I don't have merchandise or anything like that. Maybe one day in like a few years, but for now, I just make videos because I like to make videos. And I'm still trying to figure out just what sort of videos I like to make. I know there's a big retro handheld community out there, but honestly, I can't see myself making a video a week on every new handheld that comes out. I'm certainly not about to buy them all, but a few standouts, yeah, sure, I'll do that. I like actually playing the games and not just talking about the hardware we use to play the games. Part of why I started this channel was to push myself to actually play more games, so I do want to somehow incorporate that into my future videos. I guess what I'm trying to say, if I'm trying to say anything at all, is please let me know what you do and don't like about my videos and what you'd like to see more of in the future. I don't mind harsh comments, critiques. I see it all the time. I try to read every comment and respond to as many as I can, but please don't be offended if I miss yours. I appreciate every single one of you. I've learned so much from you, and I hope in return I've either entertained or enlightened you in some small way. Thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.
This holiday, Verizon's got the craziest deal ever. iPhone 17, iPad, and Apple Watch. All on them. No getting it if you're naughty.
Get iPhone 17, iPad, and Apple Watch all for $0. No trade-in needed.
Hey y'all, Scott here. I've decided to start playing game systems with names that perfectly describe me, so I'm gonna start playing the Microvision.
What's shaped like a brick and gives you hours of fun? It's a close second. The Nintendo Game Boy. That's right, it's a minor. Easily one of the most important systems in gaming history, and for good reason. There's some truth to why old people call anything that beeps a Game Boy. They worry me. But every time you see a portable video game device in a cartoon or something, it's almost always modeled after the original Game Boy. 2 buttons, a D-pad, cartridge slot. This thing is so portable game system. And even though I never officially owned one before my virgin phase, it doesn't feel like it. The original Game Boy launched a line of systems that lasted over 20 years, most models being compatible with the games from that first one. I remember bringing my Game Boy Advance to kindergarten, to which most 80-year-olds would say, that makes me feel old. The other kids and I would swap games around and try them out on our own systems, and I saw some of them having these weird gray cartridges. I was only used to the Game Boy Color and Advance ones. Then one of the kids whipped out their Game Boy. It was the original, and even back then I thought, oh, we gotta see what happens when we put a newer game in there. This is amazing! No matter what era of Game Boy you grew up with, you still sort of feel that attachment towards the others. It's all Game Boy at the end of the day. Ever since, I've always had a huge interest in that first era of Game Boy. I loved my Game Boy Color and Advance games, but I wanted to see what it was like one generation earlier. And now that I waste my time, I can finally use the original Game Boy and see what it's like. It fucking stinks. The Game Boy was created in response to the booming success of Nintendo's home console, the Nintendo Entertainment System, and the limitations of their LCD games, the Game & Watch series. The NES gave you long-lasting experiences, each on their own cartridges, some of which were high-score-based games straight out of the arcade, but many were taking gaming to the next level. Rich stories, new worlds you want to explore, definitive endings, just like a divorce. The Game & Watch games were a line of handhelds that contained one game on each, using an LCD display like a calculator. These pretty much had to be arcade-style games, just see how long you can last, try to win, like a divorce. Now, handheld game systems with cartridges weren't anything new, but they weren't anything good. Mostly dumb, simple, high-score-based games. A few of them were kind of fun, but most of these, they mainly just gave your thumbs a job. So what if we took how rich and deep the games on NES can be and shrunk them down to fit in a mouse? That was what Gunpei Yokoi was born to do. The designer of numerous Nintendo toys, the Game & Watch, and Cataracts went in and created a portable game system using interchangeable cartridges and a dot matrix screen. That sounds more impressive than it is. It's a manually operated fiber divider. The project was codenamed after the screen, Dot Matrix Game, or DMG, and didn't have a final name until Shigesato Itoi suggested the name Game Boy. This thing was developed with durability, longevity, and budgetary constraints in mind, launching at only $89.99 on July 31st, 1989 here in North America, April 21st, 1989 in Japan, and September 28th, 1990 in Europe. Nintendo has almost always been about fun on a budget, and nowhere was that more obvious than with the Game Boy. Look at this box. The future is here, fucker, and it's called 1989. This looks incredible, and then you play it. Really funny stand-up routine, dog shit system. Even when Nintendo was being more realistic with their images, like on the back of the box here, this screen still looks leagues better than what we actually get. A dot matrix display. What does that mean? It means let's get the hell out of here. Well, I guess if the Game & Watch has a display like a basic calculator, the Game Boy has a display like a more advanced calculator, one that can display more than just variations of the letter O. I mean, it still displays any old spray you could ask for here. It definitely can be used to play video games from this era. It just so happens to be ass green. Thank God I'm colorblind. The screen here is the Game Boy's biggest flaw. Not only is it not lit in any way, shape, or form, but it's not just black and white, it's black and puke. They used a green display with no colors because it helped the non-color visuals pop out the best at a low cost.
Or they just thought it'd be funny.
This is easily one of the most notorious elements of the original model. You can't use it. We have a contrast dial, which helps us see in numerous different lighting conditions, but for playing it dark, have an open mouth. We got the volume slider, headphone jack, and speakers for stereo sound, an extension port for accessories, on and off switch, a port for an AC adapter, a battery compartment begging for 4 AA's, 8 A's for just one device, and a full suite of buttons, the exact same buttons you'll find on an NES controller. They were obviously cutting corners a lot, but Nintendo ensured you would get as close to a console experience as possible with this thing. Of course, other companies responded, and they responded big. Just bring the damn TV with you at this point. Competition towards the Game Boy quickly emerged. Systems systems by Atari and Sega had full-color displays that were in fact lit up. These systems were more powerful, and I think people bought them out of fear of being crushed. All signs pointed to these things wiping the floor with the Game Boy, but Nintendo had a few aces up their sleeve. The initial price point was significantly cheaper due to the Game Boy's cost efficiency. Not using a color display will do that to you. They're all about saving money. I'm sure Nintendo employees eat cereal with water. Due to using cheaper technology, the Game Boy was not only more portable than the competition, its battery life was actually tolerable. I can't remember the last time I put batteries in this thing. It's just been run off the same ones for years. It can withstand 15 hours of continuous play on 4 AA's. Sega's Game Gear and Atari's Lynx contributed to the battery life movement we're dealing with today. I think the Game Boy's design was far more appealing to everybody. These things honestly both look the exact same. The Game Boy was unique and it feels great to play. It may be bulky by today's standards, but you can still fit it in a pocket. All the buttons, the D-pad, they feel fantastic, like actual console controller buttons. Handhelds usually have the audacity to include small clicky buttons to fit on a slimmer, tinier device compared to home console controllers. The Game Boy has these big, meaty buttons that just feel right. They feel substantial, and none of Nintendo's future portables really replicated this feeling. It's a little awkward, obviously not the best it could possibly be, but it's well designed for 1989, and at its price point, it accomplishes what it set out to do, and while that definitely added to the reason the Game Boy absolutely drained the Lynx's blood for fun, the core reason it did so well was the games. It's in the fucking name. The Game Boy launched with 5 games here in North America, with one being notoriously bundled in. Not Yakuman. Tetris was already a well-known PC game at the time, but the idea to bundle it in with the Game Boy, genius. Nintendo was considering to put the game Super Mario Land in with the package, but was told while that would help the Game Boy appeal to kids, packing in Tetris would help the Game Boy appeal to everybody. So, in North America, the Game Boy launched with a Tetris game cartridge, not only helping the system, but the Tetris brand as a whole. These two things go hand in hand. Neither one of them would be the great success they became if not for each other. Tetris on the Game Boy continues to be one of the best versions of Tetris. I know what you may be saying. Scott, fucking Tetris is fucking Tetris. No man, Grass was way better back then. Hear me out. It's crazy, but not every version of Tetris gets things right. The controls feel off. The core Tetris gameplay is altered ever so slightly, but if you want the most pure and perfect version of Tetris, it's on the Game Boy. The iconic theme is here. It all controls well. It works perfectly within the Game Boy's limitations. Like, everything appears on screen just fine. It doesn't mess around with modes that are kind of cute, then you never play again. It knows what you want. You jump in, play Tetris, jump out. It's basic, but not to a fault. And that's what I like about this version. It's simple, but it's perfectly simple. This helped the Game Boy tremendously, but that doesn't mean there weren't other games aiding to its success. Right alongside the system's launch came Super Mario Land. I always found this cover art to be so modern looking for a Mario game released in 1989. Prior to this, Mario artwork was still in its Peach Fuzz era. This one feels right in line with official art for the series released today. Of course, Super Mario Bros. Helped to catapult the NES into superstardom, really being a game everybody had to try for themselves. Truly a revolution, so it's fair to expect Super Mario Land to be the same. This game creeps me out. I love Super Mario Land, and I think most good people do. But I think it's mostly because of how charming the game is with how primitive and simple it can be. It's a very basic and short Mario game, though it has a few elements unique to it. You don't get fireballs, you get super balls that bounce around. Turtles explode on impact. A few side-scrolling shooting stages, and we have our first title with a question mark in the middle. The physics are messed up here. If you're running, it doesn't really carry into your jump that well. You fall like a rock. Precise jumps are hard to make. But none of this really matters. Like I said, the game is just so damn charming. It's not difficult, it's super short. You can beat it in like 30 minutes, so it's like, why complain about it? Is being critical about Super Mario Land going to change the world? Why does it matter that it doesn't control perfectly? It met the requirements of being Super Mario Bros. On a portable system, and that was a big deal. It still feels like Mario, and you could take it wherever you wanted. Sure, the screen of the Game Boy gets really blurry when there's a lot of movement. It can be hard to see enemies coming at you when you're running, but it's still playable. It's charming as all hell, and I still love going back to it over and over again. The game is simple, yet still Mario. The problems with the game are more so fun little quirks rather than deal breakers due to how short and easy the game is. I adore this game. Critically, you could tear it apart, but I feel like most people can see right past the flaws and enjoy this game for what it was back in 1989. The other launch titles were more so just the bare minimum of what Nintendo thought a game console needed at the time. Baseball and tennis, pretty much the same as the baseball and tennis games for the NES. Stay away. Then there was Alleyway, just a basic breakout clone, still fun and charming though, which is the opinion I have for most of these old Game Boy games. Yes, looking at them with a modern lens, they're all bitch simple. But being portable games in the late 80s, I find them to be more interesting than many home console counterparts they had. Like, I would so much rather play baseball or tennis on Game Boy than NES, and that may be because Nintendo's re-released their NES games far more often than their Game Boy ones, but I find these more endearing. The NES is more capable than this. The Game Boy, I'll take what I can get. Overall, not a bad launch lineup. Two of the most iconic games on the entire platform, one of them packed in, a fun breakout game, and 2 sports titles if you want to get laid. The original Game Boy model wasn't the hottest looker though. This thing looks like it would just taste awful. So eventually, 6 years later, Nintendo released a line of Game Boys under the slogan, "Play it loud." The deaf revolted. These were the exact same systems from '89, but now there were so many different color options. This was during Nintendo's rambunctious phase, trying to be cool for all the 90s kids. Yeah, stick it to the man, buy a yellow Game Boy. These are pretty nice additions to the lineup, but this was 6 years after the launch. The Game Boy lasted so long, and for a giant chunk of its lifespan, it was still just that old brick. The next year, in 1996, Nintendo finally released a revision titled the Game Boy Pocket, and the most tolerable handheld goes to this. It is a fraction of the size, comes in a variety of colors, only costs $69.99. The screen is bigger, clearer, doesn't get as blurry during motion sequences, doesn't look fucking disgusting, only uses 2 AAA batteries instead of 4 AA's. This is a huge improvement, though I do still think the original has more character. Just look at the fonts for the buttons, this looks like a PowerPoint presentation. Plus, I don't think it's as comfortable as the '89 model. I don't like it when my hands on the back touch. Keep these things away from each other. But the Pocket helped rejuvenate the Game Boy, giving it a much needed modern makeover. It was still incredibly affordable, and at this point had a treasure trove of games in its catalog, plus most of the problems with the original were made much better now. But one thing still needed fixed. 2 years later, in 1998, only in Japan, Nintendo released the final revision, the Game Boy Light. One of the biggest issues with the Game Boy line was the lack of any light on the screen. You just straight up couldn't see it without some kind of light source. The Game Boy Light, however, popped a backlight into the display, which you can turn on and off. Without the light, this thing lasts 20 hours on 2 AA's, which is amazing. And then with the light on, it lasts for 12 hours, which is still very respectable. The handheld is very similar to the Game Boy Pocket in terms of design, but a bit larger, which makes it more comfortable. The backlight is pretty much just here so you can play in the dark. It doesn't make the screen more viewable in good lighting conditions. In fact, half the time I can't even tell it's on. It makes the handheld playable at night. That's pretty much all it does. You know, I was hoping it was gonna give me advice. The problem is, this revision released a mere months before Nintendo released the full upgrade, the Game Boy Color. Featuring a color screen and exclusive games, it was pointless to buy this, even if it had the backlight and the color didn't. Since these released so close to each other, it's understandable why this never left Japan. Also, America hates vision. It didn't make sense to make consumers decide between a light and a color when it was obvious the color was what Nintendo really wanted to sell here. The original Game Boy wasn't discontinued until 2003, living an incredible 14 years, and it really lived on for far longer than that. The Game Boy Color and Advance were compatible with these old games, with the Advance being discontinued in 2010. The Game Boy line was so popular, with the original first 3 models selling 64 million plus units before the Color's release in '98. And all of that can be attributed to the great games released for this thing.
Like Mach and Chase and Mortal Kombat 2. I have a soft spot for the Game Boy library, but even the best games are often gimped in some ways. Though every Game Boy game I've played, I can always appreciate them, far more than a lot of other games from this era. It is so charming to go back to when this was portable gaming. It's fun to see where concessions were made, and they aren't too egregious considering you're playing it on this. Okay, what were you expecting?
These cartridges are adorable. They're like NES cartridges you can choke on more easily.
And the NES is the best console compared to the Game Boy, as most of these titles feel like black and white NES games. The Game Boy definitely isn't as capable as the NES in many ways, so games sometimes don't run as smoothly as they do on there. But again, taking the era in which this was released into consideration, you're getting a fairly comparable experience on the go. The problem is, the Super Nintendo was right around the corner and was the primary system during the Game Boy's life. So while the Game Boy can do NES-style games quite well, bringing Super Nintendo-like games over cracks me up. We can see that with the sequel to Super Mario Land, released 3 years later, Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins. You collect coins all the time, who cares? Mario Land 1 was a solid portable take on the Mario formula, though it was kind of in the camp of good enough. That game on any hardware other than the Game Boy would be executed. Mario Land 2, well, that's actually just a flat-out great game, regardless of it being on the Game Boy or not. Definitely feels more like Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo, for better or for worse. The game does struggle with how big and
and chunky the sprites are. I mean, the original Mario Land, I was worried the sprites were my spittle on the screen. Here, everything is big and bold and I love it, but we can a lot more slow down because of that. Mario Land 2 does struggle a bit with being a full-size Mario game on the handheld, but that doesn't stop it from being one of the best Game Boy games. I'm not sure I'd consider it to be one of my favorite Mario games. I kind of feel like it's made cooler just because it's a Game Boy game, but it's a great title in its own right and deserves more recognition. It was the debut of Wario, I can't say that about myself, but they ended up taking him from this game and making him the whole focus of the third Mario Land, Wario Land Super Mario Land 3. Can't wait for Max Payne's Super Mario Land 4. I always forget there were 3 Mario Lands, but it's completely fair considering the third game is an inbred take on a third game. Super Mario Land 3 isn't a Mario Land game, much like how Super Mario World 2 isn't a Mario World game. They both take characters from the previous entries and give them their own spin-off series. They just had to give them a Mario subtitle to really sell it to ya.
With hundreds of brands and 4 warehouses nationwide, you can get all the gear you need in 2 days or less. Add in 0% interest financing, along with an all-musician customer service team, and you can see why millions of musicians have chosen AMS. Ready to see the AMS difference for yourself? Head over to American Music.
Sure, Wario Land is its own game. Starring Wario, it launched
the deliveries just aren't quite as iconic. It's very hard to replace those. Hey everyone, John here! And I'm sure a lot of us have a homebrewed Nintendo 3DS, and we use them for different reasons. Originally I homebrewed mine to eliminate region locking, and over the years I found more and more use cases. And so, I wanted to share them with you, whether it's emulating systems that other systems just aren't really the best for, or replacing Nintendo Network servers, or whatever else. So, here is my essential list of things you must do with your homebrewed Nintendo 3DS. So, for this video, we're going to assume you have a homebrewed 3DS, and if that's the case, you have Luma. Press L down on the D-pad and select, and you'll get the Rosalina menu. If you make your way down to Miscellaneous, you will find Input Redirection. But what is this thing? Well, this connects to a PC program called Input Redirection Client Qt, and basically, it syncs a controller that's connected to your PC to your 3DS. So suddenly, we're in tabletop mode. Right here, I am using an Xbox controller to play my 3DS games. This feels like it disobeys the laws of nature. And what's especially cool about this is when playing new 3DS games, the second stick on your controller is also the C stick, and so you can play these games with a fully functioning, fully comfortable, right analog stick. And because my 3DS is hard modded with capture output, I can essentially turn these into docked 3DS games. But let's stick on the control side. This is Rehid. What Rehid does is remap your buttons. You can take any button on the 3DS and say, nope, be that one. Or what's really cool is you can take touch inputs and say, no, be a button. And so for games like Ocarina of Time 3D, I can take the touch buttons and say, no, be a real button, be on the D-pad. Lens of Truth? And what's seriously cool is with these remappings, we can essentially make a dual analog Kid Icarus Uprising. That game supported the Circle Pad Pro, but for left-handed people, it wasn't for dual sticks. Basically, the right stick and the left stick were both move. But with this remapping, in conjunction with some of the control options, we can make a fully featured dual analog Kid Icarus Uprising. And it could definitely use some gyro, as this is a very fast game. But regardless, it works. Now back to the Rosalina menu, which is L plus down on the D-pad plus select. Any 3DS can take screenshots. Look at this, my beautiful boy Rhythm Thief. You can then go to your SD card and view them in full, beautiful quality. And while that's pretty cool, that's not where we're stopping. One application I'd recommend highly is the Universal Updater. This is basically a big free store with a bunch of homebrew on. And through this, you can find NTR custom firmware. This is another layer of custom firmware that's going to allow even more out of your 3DS. And if you're using a new 3DS, this enables video capture. Simply have your 3DS on the same network as your console while using NTR, and on your PC, download the program SnickerStream. And from there, simply connect and your 3DS should be being streamed to your PC. Now, this won't give you the same quality as a hard-modded capture unit, but for what it is, free software that allows anyone to capture 3DS games, it works. The quality is not the best and is not being broadcasted in full 60 FPS, but if we were to shrink the display and put it in a 3DS overlay, I think this is fine for people to stream their games with. Now, let's stick with NTR for a moment and talk widgets. This is one that I'm using at the moment, a clock and frame rate overlay. Simply download it from the link in the description, and on your SD card, go to the plugin/game folder and put these overlays right there. And now when you boot into a game with the NTR custom firmware, you will get a frame rate counter right over here. And this is just kind of fascinating to see. The bulk of first-party 3DS games run really well, just a solid 30 or a solid 60, and it's interesting with the Link Between Worlds because that game is locked at 60 and it looks incredible. But whenever the screen scrolls, the game kind of pauses for a moment and the frame rate goes way down before going back to 60. But if you were to use fast travel with the broom,
Save on gifts worth giving at Best Buy. Shop now and save.
that doesn't really happen. So I think those frame drops when the screen transitions is actually intentional rather than just being a technical shortcoming. It also allows us to see that Luigi's Mansion 2 has an unlocked frame rate, so if that game's ever felt weird to you, that is probably why. It goes anywhere between 15 frames per second and around 45 frames per second. But perhaps we could fix it with the next step. We're gonna need a new 3DS for this, so let's go to the Rosalina menu. L, down the D-pad, select. And this time, we're gonna go to new 3DS settings. There's two different toggles here. We're gonna want both of them, enable the core and enable the higher clock speed. This may seem intimidating, but don't be afraid. The new 3DS is designed to run like this, so games like Xenoblade Chronicles 3D run like this all the time. And with Luigi's Mansion 2, it makes a bit of a difference. It doesn't exactly drastically change the game, it does still dip in the same areas, but definitely not as much. It runs better with these clock speeds. But there is one game that truly is elevated by these speeds. This is Rayman 3D, and the base game is pretty dreadful. Like Luigi's Mansion 2, this game has an unlocked frame rate, but it barely ever hits 60 and barely ever hits 30. This just runs badly, but if we were to enable these speeds, suddenly we get a locked 60 FPS. This is a game changer. This makes Rayman 3D one of the best versions of Rayman 2, and it was one of the poorest versions of Rayman 2, all because of these new 3DS speeds. Now, these are somewhat experimental. Some games may freeze with these on. Ridge Racer 3D is one that's known to freeze quite a bit, but most games seem absolutely fine. Like Resident Evil The Mercenaries 3D, usually it's dipping around 25 to 30, sometimes lower, but with the clocks on, we're pretty much locked at 30 all the time. And of course, the Pokemon games too. Battle specifically could dip really low, but with these clock speeds on, again, we're pretty much locked at 30, unless we're using 3D. In that case, we're still not locked at 30. But it is marginally better. There's also a big list of cheat codes you can put on to make the frame rate even higher for some games. Like Metal Gear Solid 3D is locked at 20 FPS on 3DS. Yeah, you heard that right, locked at 20, it can't go above 20. But using this code, we can force it to go up to 30 FPS. And the new 3DS with these clock speeds can hit that, but if it goes below 30, the entire game slows down, so it's not very playable. These codes are mostly intended for an emulator and not really for use on console, but you can use them if you want to. And here is a very simple one: bypass region. There's lots of really cool games that only released in Japan, or physical editions that only released in America. Like here in Europe, Shin Megami Tensei 4 did not come on a cartridge, that was just eShop exclusive, and if you were to buy that now, you'd be out of luck. You'd have to import that game from America. But with custom firmware, you can. Very, very simple. Nintendo Network across 3DS and Wii U is about to close. Depending on when you're watching this video, it may already be closed. But we don't have to cry. On Universal Updater, you can find Pretendo. And using the Nimbus application, we can take our 3DS from Nintendo servers to Pretendo servers. And this allows games like Mario Kart 7 to live online indefinitely. Right now, Pretendo is covering games like Kid Icarus Uprising, Mario Kart 7, Steel Diver Subwars, Team Kirby Clash, Mario Maker, Triforce Heroes, Pokemon Rumble World, and far more on Wii U as well. There is still some building to be done, and we've done 2 whole videos covering Pretendo, but this is the future of 3DS and Wii U online. Absolutely essential. And for games like Triforce Heroes, it disables region locking as well, so American people can play with European people, and Japanese people. It's a free new world, baby. One really cool thing that 3DS is capable of is playing Game Boy Advance games natively. That's what the Ambassador games were. Basically, because the architecture across 3DS, DS, and GBA is the same, backwards compatibility is very, very easy. Now, Nintendo only ever gave us 10 games officially, and they had a horrible dark filter on them. But of course, people found a way to inject their own games to play with no horrible filter, and this basically gives you perfect Game Boy Advance playback. There's no emulation here. This is being played entirely natively on a 3DS. And if you want to, there's also OpenAGB Firm, which doesn't require you to make a whole bunch of injects and install them, and instead just lets you play a list of ROMs. Star Fox 64 3D is an absolutely banging game, but if I had any criticism, it would probably be the audio. I don't think the soundtrack is as strong as the original, and while it's very cool they got the original cast back to reprise their roles, the deliveries just aren't quite as iconic. It's very hard to replace those original lines, and so we don't have to. We can put the N64 audio back in the game. And because the original uncompressed recordings were found in the Nintendo Giga Leak, we can even have them in a quality we've never really heard before.
It's your time to explore, to battle, to...
Here's how it sounds.
Slippy, watch out! Won't be on the tail!
Whoa! Help me! Thanks, Fox! Thought they had me.
Hey, Einstein, I'm on your side!
Hell yeah, Einstein's canon in the Star Fox universe again. One other great soundtrack mod is Dragon Quest VIII. The PS2 version of this game had a beautiful orchestral score, but the 3DS version is basically better in every other way. There's so many great quality of life improvements, like no random encounters, it's just monsters in the overworld all the time, and battles can be faster. But there's also this horrible MIDI soundtrack. But let's get rid of it. Oh yeah, the MIDI trumpets have been defeated. In this category, we've also got fan translations, taking games that only released in Japan and putting them in English for the very first time. So we've got games like Puyo Puyo Chronicle here, a full-on Puyo Puyo RPG that never surfaced in the West, and it is absolutely bang-ing. In terms of mods that change the entire game, one of the most famous ones is CTGP7. This is a Mario Kart 7 mod that allows custom tracks and custom characters, and this can be played online as well. It's mad. Next up is Virtual Boy emulation. And I'm sure some people are going, oh, well, what a stupid novelty that is. But no, this is so flipping cool. The Virtual Boy had its problems, but those problems weren't software. It was all hardware related. And so when you eliminate that hardware and play them on 3DS, suddenly you can appreciate these games way, way further. Games like Mario Clash, Virtual Boy Wario Land, Vertical Force, Jack Brothers, they all rock. And the best part is, they can be played in stereoscopic 3D. The 3D effect here looks just as good as any sprite-based 3DS game. It was truly ahead of its time in that regard. And we can get rid of the jarring red color scheme and make it any color we want. I really like these games in cyan. It's just easier to look at and play. This is 3D Movie Viewer, and it basically allows you to take any 3D movie, convert it to MoFlex file, and watch it on your 3DS. So right here, we have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse being watched in full stereoscopic 3D on the 3DS. Nintendo distributed a few 3D videos themselves, but never full-length movies, so this is just wild to have. Now, this is really cool. There are cheat codes that strengthen the 3D effect. So one thing I noticed in Majora's Mask 3D is the 3D effect is pretty weak compared to Ocarina of Time 3D. They just made it much weaker and the depth was way lower. And so, with these cheat codes, we can say, no buddy, I want an entire world living in my 3DS, and we can make it deep as all flip. Of course you can't see this in video, but look how far Link is moving to the right over here. That's how much depth we're getting. How about save states? This is usually a feature for emulators, but we can use it in native 3DS software. So in Pokemon, if I were to find a shiny, I could save state and ensure that I'm going to capture that thing. There'd be no more risk. Or in a platformer, if there's a very specific jump that's causing a lot of trouble, I can save state and keep returning back to it. Now, let's enhance a bunch of Nintendo DS games. Unfortunately, DS games live in a different sandbox to 3DS, and so we don't have things like the Rosalina menu, and we can't use 3DS features for the most part. However, we can patch them prior with the TW patch. This can make the 3DS's DS scaling look a lot better, but there's also an option for a widescreen hack. This won't really work for 2D games, they just kind of get stretched, but for polygon games, it looks absolutely stunning. But let's not stop there, because there's also cheat codes that enable the circle pad. And by enable the circle pad, I don't just mean putting the D-pad on the circle pad like it is by default, but instead giving these games full analog movement. And for some games, even the C-stick can be used, like Mario 64 DS. And in other games, even gyro can be used, like in Metroid Prime Hunters. We've got a full video on this, please check it out. And our final thing is homebrew games. Now, there are some great original pieces of software out there, but I want to focus on a few ports. This one right here is Open Lara, a port of Tomb Raider 1 on the 3DS. And what's really special about this is, yes, it's in widescreen. Yes, it's 60 FPS, that's great, but also, it's running in stereoscopic 3D. This is simply a wonderful way to play the game. I think it's more special than the official release that just happened. And because Tomb Raider is typically a standard definition game, it just looks great on the 3DS's small screen. What a brilliant port.
The return of Area 51, Alienware's highest performance desktop yet. Equipped with powerful Intel Core Ultra processors. Innovative architecture designed for ultimate gaming. Engineered to evolve alongside your game. Encounter the legendary Area 51 at Alienware.com.
What are you doing in a meeting that could have been an email? Losing interest. Don't let it happen to your money, too. Vanguard's Cash Plus account can't help you at work, but we can help with your savings. Find out how much interest you could earn at Vanguard.com/cashplus.
But we've also got Super Mario 64, and this is incredibly similar to Open Lara. It's Mario 64, it's 60 FPS, and it is in stereoscopic 3D. I don't need to tell you how cool it is for the pioneer of 3D movement to be in 3D. I always wished we'd get an official port like this on the 3DS, and what we have here is simply majestic. So, you've got the option between a native Mario 64 3DS version and an enhanced Mario 64 DS. And our final game is Sonic Mania. Now, the load times are pretty long, and the special stages don't run particularly well, but general gameplay is near flawless. This unfortunately doesn't have stereoscopic 3D, but for a 3DS version of a 2017 console game, it's just crazy that it runs at all. So, those are the main things that I use a hacked system for. But the homebrew scene on 3DS is absolutely massive, so I'm sure I didn't cover absolutely everything. So let me know what you use a hacked 3DS for in the comments. Are there any other big things that I didn't list in this video? And because you watched all the way through until the end, it is hot take time. What my new 3DS is wearing right now This is the sexiest faceplate known to man. The sexiest thing that has Mario, a coin, a boo, and a bullet bill on. This. Look at this. It's like 3DS is classed up and now bears wood carving. It feels so nice. Like some of these faceplates have like a glossy feel to them, but not this. This feels premium. And for that reason,
Ready for the interrogation?
Hey you. Yeah, you. Jake. From California. Did you know that the Wii U fucking rocks? Yes, I'm serious. Come on, wait, hear me out. Get off the stage, Stop the Walls. You too, buddy. I'll have you know I consider that comparison an honor. But really though, we all know that the Wii U was a laughingstock when it was current. It sold terribly, its software library was famously unappealing, and its main gimmick, the gamepad, was at best underutilized. But now that it's not the mid-2010s and the Wii U is relatively cheap and easy to mod, the chains are off. If you're willing to do a little bit of tech tinkering, which, if you're watching this video, chances are you do, the Wii U is perhaps the most versatile and useful modded console you can own. In terms of the amount of games it can play, homebrew it can run, its inputs and outputs, plus a couple special gimmicks, I think it is absolutely unmatched by any other modded game console. Let me show you why. Hey all, Seth here. So the Wii U, huh? What a strange era for Nintendo. I actually owned this Wii U while it was current, so I was there in the trenches back then. Of course, the only reason I actually bought this unit refurbished from Nintendo was to play Smash. My brother might have played Splatoon or Mario Maker or whatever, but I only gave a shit because Smash 4 is still currently the only game in existence where both of my autistic childhood obsessions are playable and competitively viable. Anyway, I know that Nintendo really wants the general public to forget the Wii U even existed. Please buy a Switch 2! We really need you to pay for overpriced, still stick-drifting accessories and our standard-breaking USB-C dock. How will we make even more billions of dollars if you don't buy overpriced re-releases of our 20-year-old games? Reggie Fils-Aimé will personally go homeless if you don't buy Chicken Shoot Remastered for the Switch 5 for $120. Oh, you want to make free, extremely niche fan games of our beloved, world-renowned IPs? You want to hold competitions for our fighting games that are essentially free advertising? Go fuck yourself and anything you ever stood for. You want to at least buy your childhood games to play on current hardware? Nah, pay us a subscription. And if you ever stop paying, your only way to play Pokemon Stadium legitimately on modern hardware is gone forever. Oh, and the only way to back up your saves. Hope you don't drop your portable game console. Oh, you want to modify the hardware you purchased and now legally own yourself? Fuck you, your expensive handheld computer is now a brick. Calm down, Seth. Calm down. Go to your happy place. Go. Anyway, no, we shouldn't forget about the Wii U. By the end of its life, it actually had some good games, at least good enough for them to just be straight up ported to the Switch, and it can play the entire Wii library too. Plus, you know the Wii, right? The most famous modded console of our time? Yeah, the Wii U has a fully accessible virtual Wii built into it. Every piece of homebrew made for the Wii, more or less, can also run on the Wii U. Oh, and if I told you that it plays GameCube games completely natively, no emulation needed, output via HDMI for modern displays, or various analog outputs for CRTs, with cheap, universally available component cables. On top of all of that, the gamepad, and all of the other compatible Wii controllers, gives this console a ton of flexibility with how you can use it, and it's powerful enough to emulate any console before the GameCube. Finally, there's one cool little cherry on top that neither the PS3 nor the 360 can replicate at the moment. You saw it in the thumbnail, but wait, we'll get there. First, I want to show you all the cool shit this stupid brick can do. Alright, welcome to my HD CRT setup. This is where I plug in all of my 7th gen consoles, plus the Switch and a Roku. I'd love to use the PS3 as a streaming box, but this is actually my main bedroom TV, and it gets a lot of use. Also, don't mind that Ethernet cable. It's a surprise tool that will help us later. Also, yeah, I'm super proud of this TV find. I spent literally months looking for a HD Trinitron with a super fine pitch tube. There's a whole story behind that. Won't say it right now, but if you want to see that in a later video, let me know. Anyway, let's turn on the Wii U. I've modded mine with Aroma. This video won't be a Wii U modding tutorial, but if you want to learn how to mod yours, I will leave a link in the description. Okay, I just took a look at the footage. It looks like there's some artifacting. Recording a CRT be like that. Just know that this image is not all grainy and liney in person. It looks amazing. I love this TV. So, of course, you can play legal backups of your games on a modded Wii U. See? Look, legal. Yeah, I've loaded mine up with a ton of games, not quite completionist level, but everything I could want to play, plus some virtual console stuff. Yeah, let's boot up Smash. Ah, I love the music of this game. If you weren't aware, there are actually a lot of mods for Smash 4 that are pretty easy to install on a modded Wii U. I was super into Smash when Smash 4 was the current game. Oh, I miss when Mewtwo was good. Let's go. Well, that's creepy. And of course, you can play Wii games. Here's Mario Kart Wii. If you knew me in high school, you knew me as the person who managed to get Dolphin running on the school's max so I could play this game. I'm forgetting the controls. Ow. I swear I used to be good at this game. And yep, here's GameCube games via Nintendo with full GameCube controller support via the official adapter. No emulation needed.
Unfortunately, the Wii U's disk drive can't read GameCube discs, but since it has all of the Wii's hardware already in it, which itself was just a juiced up GameCube, it can play GameCube ISOs 100% natively. Neat! Also, there was a small point in time where I wanted to get good at Melee. Obviously, that never quite happened.
I still have some muscle memory with L canceling, but believe me, not much. Ah, that would have been cool.
The Wii U has its own homebrew store with plenty of useful tools and interesting games in it, including RetroArch cores.
Did I mention the Wii U plus gamepad is absolutely perfect for Nintendo DS emulation? And Blue Pair, which allows you to pair non-Nintendo Bluetooth controllers. But like I said before, there's a whole ass Wii stuffed inside every Wii U, so we can also run every piece of Wii homebrew. And there's a lot of Wii homebrew out there. If an emulator doesn't exist for the Wii U, it probably exists on the Wii. Did you know there's a Wii port of Sonic Mania? And Classic Cube? Even Minecraft Beta 1.7.3? Plus a ton of still active multiplayer servers for modded Mario Kart Wii. It's really cool stuff. I just wish there was a fleshed out media player app for the Wii U. WiiMC is great and all, but that's Wii, it's not an HD. I'd really like to see a port of Kodi or XBMC. Anyway, now we can get to what I think is the coolest thing the Wii U can do, game streaming. That's right, not only can it play a ton of games by itself, you can stream anything you want from your PC to your Wii U over the network, enabling you to use your Wii U gamepad as a sort of limited area Steam Deck, or in my case, give me an easy way to play PC games on my HD CRT here. You are limited to around 720p 60 FPS, which does suck at first, but you'd be surprised how decent that looks, especially on a CRT. The gamepad's resolution doesn't even go that high, so it's not an issue if you just want to play games on the gamepad. Again, this isn't a tutorial video, but I'll link some instructions on how to set this up in the description. All we gotta do is make sure Sunshine is running on our computer, boot up Moonlight, and voila, Steam Big Picture mode. All the gamepad inputs are streamed to the PC as if it were an Xbox controller. Also, you can move the mouse using the touchpad. I don't know if that's coming through in the video, but I think it's neat. All right, let's play something that you definitely cannot play on the Wii U. So again, this is only streaming at 720p 60, but It looks really good. This is a hell of an upgrade from the video where I was using an 80s CRT, that's for sure. Yeah. So the inputs, there's a delay, but not as much as the lossless scaling video. And yeah, it looks great. There's some jittering sometimes, but when I'm using Ethernet, at least, I've never had it drop out. I think this looks great. This would be an excellent way to play games on this TV, honestly. Maybe if I could do something about the jitter, though.
Fun fact, the Wii U has its own custom H.264 decoding library made for streaming to the gamepad, which this Moonlight port takes advantage of, and as a perk the PS3 and 360 don't have. Cool.
So yeah, in conclusion, the Wii U rocks. It can play all kinds of games, emulators, and homebrew on all kinds of different controllers, output via HDMI or various analog video standards, and even stream games from your computer. The Xbox 360 can't stream your PC games, PS3 can't play GameCube games, or give you a mini Steam Deck. Speaking of which, if you're a real Nintendo fanboy, I think the Wii U and the Switch 2 are a great pairing, despite my rant at the beginning. You can use the Wii U to play or emulate any Nintendo game older than the Switch, while the Switch 2 plays anything newer. Sort of like how the backwards compatible PS3 and the PS5 are a great pairing for PlayStation fans. Anyway, with that said, that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video showing off how useful old underrated technology can still be, consider liking the video or subscribing. If you thought this video was pretty good for getting a lot of use out of old tech, then you will be floored by the next one. Anyway, that's all for now. Have a good one.
We put in the work to make the holidays fresh. You put in the work to make them special. Count on Albertsons this holiday.
Get the 20% cash back Black Friday offer when you pay in 4. No fees, no interest. Limited time offer ends December 8th. Save the offer in the app now. PayPal.
Hey y'all, Scott here, and extra, read all about it. E3 2017 looms. Turns out the newspaper industry was struggling so hard they let virginity reign supreme, and now we're getting front page headlines like this now. As a fan of the video game industry, E3 is one of the greatest times of the year. Even though they're referred to as press conferences, the presentations at the start of the show are so much more than that. Events like CES have press conferences, but it never feels like the companies are trying to win the event. At E3, all the companies are trying to one-up each other, which leads to jaw-dropping announcements nobody saw coming, or announcements to appease fans everywhere. However, E3 back in the day was more so CES, but for games. E3 1995 was the first show held in the event's history, taking place from May 11th to the 13th. The big three that had a presence at the show were Nintendo, Sony, and Sega, with 3DO, Atari, and numerous third parties joining them. 3DO's conference was a crock and a half. They mainly focused on their upcoming console, the M2. It was cancelled in 1997, but check these swift graphics it could pump out. God, I'm sorry, it was just so real. It was like I was really watching a video of a pre-rendered cutscene. One of the most annoying things about this conference to me was the fact that they showed off these graphical demos and then at the end, showed them again. You see, these demos were all a part of one video. They transitioned into each other, but the presentation shows the demos edited without the transitions out of context, and then they're all like, and now check this out. And it's the same demos we saw beforehand, just uncut. As I previously stated, it's pretty obvious these are pre-rendered demos and not actual gameplay. This is a practice that's been happening since the very beginning, so don't act like only recently game developers started doing this. Also, I like how the 3DO guy brags about how much porn is on the console. I've been thinking of a brand new rating system based on how many knee slaps I give something, so we might as well try it out. Out of 5 knee slaps, I give 3DO's conference a... Nintendo had to delay the Nintendo 64, then name the Nintendo Ultra 64, by a year. So in place of their big new console, they talked about piracy. Literally just piracy. They said the Virtual Boy was coming out, basically holding everybody over until the N64, but fundamentally their entire conference was former chairman of NOA Howard Lincoln talking about counterfeit cartridges and devices.
This innocent looking thing is known as the video game copier, a machine to make counterfeit software.
That was it. So Nintendo showed off a few SNES games like Killer Instinct, Donkey Kong Country 2, and Earthbound, while also showing off the Virtual Boy, so they had some good games to show off, but it was definitely lacking. E3 1995 was an infamous E3 for Sega, as it emphasized their slow spiral into "we're scrimp." Honestly, their conference was leagues better than 3DO's or Nintendo's, and it takes a lot to be better than porn brags and bootleg finger wags. Sega actually showed off a fair amount of games, even showing some affection for the aging Sega Genesis, announcing Comic Zone.
We have hot new products awaiting launch on all our platforms. As just a sampling of this, let me mention Comic Zone.
But it was all about the Sega Saturn, and Sega announced it was available now for $399. Not one of the smartest tactics around.
We started our rollout of Sega Saturn yesterday. We're at retail today in 1,800 Toys R Us, software, etc., and electronic boutique stores around the U.S. and Canada. Our retail price is between $399 and $449.
This angered retailers, as this gave them very little prep time or time at all to get consumers excited, or even to inform consumers, which led the Saturn down the road of nobody knows this console exists. It was one of the most infamous events in Sega's career in the console business, but the conference could have been far worse.
With hundreds of brands and 4 warehouses nationwide, you can get all the gear you need in 2 days or less. Add in 0% interest financing, along with an all-musician customer service team, and you can see why millions of musicians have chosen AI.
Sony's conference felt like it flew right by. To be fair, all of these conferences are only around 20 to 30 minutes, but the majority of them dragged. Sony's was pretty quick, even though it was just about 20 minutes of, look at us, we're Sony, we sell concrete matter and even the Walkman.
Camcorders the size of a paperback? Okay, let's get this done.
The show is basically Sony explaining why they're entering the games industry, popping up a sizzle reel and then giving Sega a solid lick to the chin with the announcement that the PlayStation would retail for $299, 100 bones less than the Saturn.
Sony Computer Entertainment President of America, Steve Reyes, join me for a brief presentation. $299.
Yikes, this was back when game companies were feisty with each other and didn't mind getting aggressive. Nowadays, they have respect for each other in chunk. I mean, that's nice, but you kinda want a $299 moment every now and then, you know? Atari didn't have a huge presence at the show, as everybody had already basically written them off. However, they did show off the Atari Jaguar VR, which never came to market. E3 was obviously less about the fans back in the day and felt more like an investors meeting. Of course, the press conferences weren't streamed or broadcast anywhere for fans to watch, so the shows were obviously going to be a bit on the dry side. To put it lightly, I think it's pretty neato to see where E3 all started, and I have no doubt in the future we'll be taking a look at E3s to follow. And I hope you all look forward to my live reactions to E3 2017 being uploaded right as we speak, as I'm reusing my old live reactions from E3 2014. Classic me being me, that's me for ya, the lovable shill Scott! Hey y'all, Scott here, and, well, this is awkward. Let's put an end to that. This here is a state-of-the-art It's That Time machine. It formulates a topic that's embarrassingly topical, so you always have something trendy to converse about. Looks like it's forming something now. Oh, that was lame. Don't get me wrong, I love talking about E3 1996 and October 2017 as much as the next guy, but come on, 97 to 98 are way in these days. But that kind of got me on an E3 1996 kick, so let's talk about the second annual Electronic Entertainment Expo. E3 1996 is one of the more important E3s that never happened, and I say this because this is one of the harder years in the event's history to find footage from. yet it contains a good bit of the major events in gaming history. Now that's in terms of all the press conferences though. The only one that is clearly available is a good chunk of Nintendo's, with only a little snippets from Sony's, and